Good evening. Welcome. My name is Maria, and this is Pain to Power, brought to you in association with the iRant Network. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited about my guest, and in a few moments, I'm going to be bringing him on. Before I do, please make sure that you are subscribing to this channel right now, hitting the like button to make sure that you are showing us love. And if you're watching the pre-recording, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and hit the like. So this is Pain to Power, where I am leading conversations and bringing some dynamic guests to talk about how we turn our pain into power through healing and exploration of identity and self. So in that, I am, in addition to the talk show host of Pain to Power, I'm a writer. And recently I have been discovering this idea of finding my joy. And I wrote about it in my piece called I Want to Dance with Someone, because part of my joy is dancing. But I wanted to share with you that there's this unexpected outcome when we start to find our joy that I don't think everybody talks about, but I've started to realize it, which is that when you start to understand what brings you joy, you actually start to build up your boundaries of what does not bring you joy and what can potentially bring you harm. And that's been a beautiful understanding for myself, because in finding joy, I've also found my own awareness of how to vocalize what doesn't bring me joy. And I'm able to identify when something doesn't sit well with me and align with joy. Things that normally would, when we think of alignment, be peace, calm, growth. And if it doesn't, I don't want it in my life. This is the healing journey. It is about identifying those things that you know cause you harm or are limiting your growth, and starting to interrupt those narratives and conversations in your mind and when it comes to others. So today, I am super excited to have you joining with us today, someone who has also understood joy, love, and healing, and the importance of all of it through spreading his voice and sharing his origin story. As an educator, author, a trauma responsive speaker, and trainer. Please welcome the author of the book, Heartleader, A Trauma Responsive Approach to Teaching, Leading, and Building Communities, Mathew Bowerman.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
It's so great to have you, Mathew. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It was a little chilly, but it was a beautiful day, and just enjoyed it. My son and I took a nice walk today, and ran the normal life errands and things, and just kind of appreciated the day, and made the most of a Sunday, getting ready for the work week. So
that's a good thing. A sunny Sunday is actually really quite a welcome thing. Let's be honest. Even
I
with the
agree.
chilly, sunny is nice. I'm over the rain, so that's a great thing. And yeah, so I'm glad you got your father time, and now you get to just share a little bit with us of and we'll get into a little bit of fatherhood and quite a lot of things today. But you know, I'm really glad to have you on here. I know you are an author of a book, and you also have you directed and wrote a documentary. But all of this kind of is in the backdrop of your understanding of pain and power. So I always ask my guests when they come on to tell me their thoughts in terms of when you think of this idea of turning pain into power. What has that meant for you?
I think when one considers pain, what it looks like, and what it feels like, and smells like, tastes, in all of its nuances and colors, however it comes to one, either directly or vicariously. Um, the way I've learned to try to manage it, like mitigate it, is really around seeing the opportunities embedded in it. That just like being afraid of something, and we fear things that we don't understand, and we become afraid because it's partially our body, and then our brain and our emotions kind of all coming together, intersecting to give us messaging, to let us know something. There's a lot of traffic crossing the street, and you want to get to the other side quickly, It's a little scary to try to navigate that, especially if you're not at the crosswalk. It's your body, your brain's way of telling you you need to slow down, take a breath, and look what's all around you, so you don't get injured and put yourself in harm's way. And I find that um, I continue to try to see pain like that when it occurs or when previous pain is triggered, um, or when I'm also navigating, I think, other people and how they are trying to understand and work through pain. There's opportunities there, like you mentioned, opportunity for healing, opportunity for recognition and leaning into the discomfort of pain, um, opportunity to move forward from it once you understand, I think, the source around it or of it, um, and be able to know that it's very fragile and vulnerable beings um, that often are in vulnerable spaces. Is really okay um, to not be okay due to pain that you've experienced. Um, and as you kind of lean into that and work through it and at times carry the weight of it, that there again are opportunities in there as you work through it and learn to process it, to do everything from kind of learn to regulate your emotion, to practice and promote self-compassion and self-love, to kind of exist in a state of trying to be mindful to reduce, hyperarousal, and kind of process through like feelings around shame or self-blame or low self-esteem, all those things that kind of are traumatically often attached to pain. So it's kind of, I think, the spaces I really tend to try to put myself in when I consider what pain means to me in my personal and professional experiences.
Thank you. I think you outlined so much in the nuances, but also I think the many different layers, right, of pain between our body, our minds, our emotions, and just all the different ways that it can be perceived, and that fear around it too. So I appreciate that. Before we move on, I just want to make sure because there's a little bit of an audio issue with your. I don't know. Do you have headphones that we maybe we could try to see if that works with the audio because I do want to make sure everybody hears all the important things you're saying all about trauma. And you speak about your origin story, I know, in your book itself, but I think it's clear to me that you yourself are coming from a very personal space in understanding all these nuances in pain and in trauma and all of the connections between it. So tell me a little bit more just about your own journey of kind of coming to this conclusion in what pain has meant in your life.
I think for a long period of time, I was unable to process pain and resolve it. So therefore, forgiveness and healing were primarily inaccessible to me because I wasn't in a space where I was able to understand them or receive them, and partly because the pain that that I write about, that I think I have carried with me now in a different kind of way than I carried it in my younger time, but it was because it started so young, that pain. And the trauma attached to that pain is really around physical and sexual abuse. It was, that occurred at the hands of trusted people in educational spaces at the elementary, middle, and then high school level. Starting so young, I mistook, the the smiling the smiling face and the probing hands and the other things that subsequently came about, attached to that pain as connection, in some cases friendship or love, being so young, 8, 9, 10 years old. And then as I got older, I didn't understand the differences And in some cases, something that I guess would physically or emotionally hurt around this idea of pain, because I was really looking for something, connection, friendship, ways to fit in, to find my place, this little boy in this big world. So while something physical or emotional might have been painful or confusing, I mistook that in some cases for a form of love or connection, and it became very distorted in my heart, mind, my spirit. And subsequently, as I got a little older, that vulnerability made me very hyper emotional and very prone to easy hyper arousal, because I was dealing with a lot of trauma that was unresolved, with no place to pour it out, not attached at that time to any kind of mental health, too afraid to speak about it, et cetera, in the narrative. But it ended up just making me more vulnerable to more pain. And at that point, I was certainly able to recognize what pain was and what pain felt like, whether, different than like a falling in the skin knee. This was something much more deep beneath the layers, and, pushed its way into me in a way that left some really deep and painful imprints. Trauma has a lot of emotional memory to it. It's kind of like putting your hand deep into a memory foam mattress and leaving that imprint. There were a lot of fingerprints and handprints left on my emotional psyche in very painful ways. And I think it took the better part of most of my adult life to peel back those layers and get the right kind of mental health and partner with the right kind of people and play, and escape from those monsters and do the hard work, but the right kind of work to start to unpack that pain, to turn it into something else, to turn it, I guess, in this way, the power, and to empower myself really, and to start to take back the pieces of myself that had subsequently been taken from me, robbed, in essence, that had been stolen, broken off of me, like snapping off pieces of a twig. And then, so I think that's a big piece of it, part of it.
But that's huge. And first, Mathew, thank you for your honesty and vulnerability. I think just as an adult, to speak to all of that, in even just the honesty of saying that you didn't even identify it as pain originally, right? Like you that confusion of children experiencing things and making sense of things is really real. And there's a lot of kids, I'm sure, that are in that space currently and have been in that space, as well as adults, right? So I think there's so much power in speaking to things that are not spoken about. So I truly appreciate you bringing that to the space and being honest about that. And so tell me like a little bit about how you started then to see those things differently. Like at what point in your life were you able to identify that what you were experiencing was deeper than just your trigger of emotion, right? When were you able to speak to it and name it, and what kind of led to that for you?
I appreciate that. Thank you for what you said. And I appreciate that. I think I was connected with a variety of grown-ups, of adults that were, people that one would assume you would trust, who were nothing like that. And so I was very confused about the dynamics and interplay between child adult, and just how far they would or wouldn't go, and just how far I was or wasn't supposed to go. And I write in my book that like trauma doesn't happen, with a child. It happens to them. It's done to them. And the things that were done to me as this child really left me unsure how to trust or understand those relationships. And so I was heavily interested in and involved in the arts as a young child. I often tell people now, I think a big part of it was so much more beautiful and interesting to be somebody else than Matthew, because I was so, I think, afraid of what people would find out or what they would know or what else might happen. I'm not sure, but playing those characters, disappearing in the music and dance and all of these things that I had a given gift for and was really good at, started to lead me also into some other spaces. And it was there early on. One of my mentors, and still one of my mentors today, I thank him in the back of the book, Dr. Anthony Leach, who was a head of gospel and choir music at Penn State for a very long time, retired now, but he was running a program for gifted and talented in the arts. And he was one of the first adults outside of my family and outside of that next level circle who just saw this hyper emotional, wounded, scared little boy without, you never have to know a child's trauma to love them. I say that frequently, and he certainly didn't know it at the time, but he saw things about me. He saw opportunities. He saw possibility, and he just loved on me and nurtured and mentored and challenged and encouraged and praised and gave me a world of music and experience that I had not experienced before. And it was able to open up new levels of love and trust between us and just for myself, that then gave me other outlets for my dysregulated self, for my fear, for my anger. And while I still struggled in school and was still, dealing with those other things, I had this other place now that was a safe place and a safe person, that led me, for many, many, many years that we were collaborating and together, that saved my life. That literally saved me. And there have been just a few people. They happen to all be educators, funny enough, but about three of them in my life at very distinctly different points, who not saw me as broken, but saw those cracks, saw that damage at one point or another, saw the struggle and just reached in and poured love into me to fill all those cracks. And at each of those points, I needed that and was being caught up in that swirl of the previous trauma, of things unresolved, and still those childhood wounds and some adult ones as well, and were able to help continue to light the path for me, and not only light it, but take my hand and walk me along with them. So it was really some powerful moments like that. And then, of course, I think parallel to that journey, it wasn't until I was much older and had, I guess, the access and insurance and or finances to, at least with a job, get mental health work wrapped around me, and get, connected with people who could really also do deeper work at that level too, that were very, supportive in their roles and things.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one powerful that you were able to shift that narrative of not trusting adults to trusting adults again, like that in and of itself, right? I think you lay out how educators have this power to break and build kids, and you've had both happen for you. And Dr. Leach, is that what you said? Correct? That was his name?
Yes, Leach. Dr. Tony Leach.
Dr. Tony Leach, yeah. I mean, but it sounds like he definitely had an impact on you, and now you are doing so much with that. So from this experience and what you learned through that shift of trusting educators again, it sounds like, right? And arts. Tell us a little bit about just how did your journey then kind of start to move into now your power? Because I feel that's where we're going, right? Like that's where you started to now see yourself, to see, when you heal, it's an interesting thing, right? Healing actually kind of almost lifts up this veil of the narratives you think you have to what your actual narrative should be and can be. So what was that like when you started to discover Mathew?
That's a big one. I think in discovering Matthew, I was able to start to really forge a self-identity at that point, and the arts were certainly the mechanism for it. I was, blessed or gifted, whatever it might be, in singing, acting, and dancing, and then other parts of the arts too, painting and drawing, and just a lot of the fine and visual arts, but specifically the performing arts. Were where I started to excel. And for every challenge that I was faced with to work on voice or work on dance skills or work on acting things, there were Dr. Leach and, subsequently others who saw those gifts and helped to really sharpen the skills, but also sand down the edges of my damage as well. And as that happened, I really began to be very entrenched in the work and put myself out there more in the work. And surround myself with people that were safe to me. The theater space, dance studios were safe spaces for me, and I found myself in them all the time, weekends, days, nights, etc., both in classes and in performance work. And then subsequently, I was doing that, middle school, I was doing that in high school. And outside of high school at that time, and then went to college for theater, and studied voice and dance and acting and everything with the sole intention to become a professional, full-time performer. Mm-hmm. And still with that same mentor. At that time, I met my other closest mentor in my work, Dr. Marvine Lushke, who was the president. She's since passed, but the president of Towson University, and the theater chair there, and a phenomenal human being and actress in her own right, nurtured and grew me just miraculous ways as a human being. And when I said, even before graduation, everybody's always talking about what they want to do. I'm just going to go do it, because this is what I want to do. This is what I have to do. This is what I was born to do. And I was in a place that was fully self-assured now, having kind of reforged myself. And she was like, go make it happen. No excuses. And before I even graduated, I had gone to New York and set up auditions and landed the national tour of a musical. So I came back and finished graduation and left for New York and began a year-long tour. And from there, I was professionally performing in theater, off Broadway, national touring, television and film, for an extensive period of time. And even when I became an educator, I was still working in New York and performing on the side, not full time anymore, but still actually pursuing the career. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, where I have other full time kind of obligations now, I'm still doing some performing on the side. I still privately coach, juniors and seniors in high school prepping for college. I still occasionally direct and choreograph. And get involved in those ways when it happens. But one of my biggest regulating and coping mechanisms is singing. So I'm at a piano or a guitar, or around all the time singing. Like my family would say, Daddy was always singing. At school, I'm singing to the kids, wandering around singing, hallways, everywhere. It is my prayer. It is my way of giving grace and healing on myself every day. And the voices of those who love me into these better spaces are constantly with me. And all the artifacts they've given me from their learning and poured into me, I carry them like mantras and totems, every day, to keep my spirit refreshed and strong against the times when, the monsters creep out from under the beds and closets, and the shadows fall from time to time, which they do for us all.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a beautiful thing though. And I think what you're outlining is that you had tools, right? So in finding you found all these tools to keep you going, to keep you healing, because it is an evolution and it's a constant journey, right? Because as you talk about often, right, trauma doesn't just go away, right? It doesn't ever go away. It is something that your body is has absorbed, has taken in, and it's going to keep coming back. But how do you then use those tools to heal, to keep moving forward? And obviously, you know, music was huge for you. I think that's beautiful. I've heard that for a lot of people, is that music can be so healing, right? And it is for many. So you really pulled away from this trauma with these tools, with acting, with finding yourself through that. But it sounds like, obviously, you know, you went back and you did your doctorate in understanding trauma. You have now written a book all about trauma responsive communities and building with love. What allowed you to come back to this space that you were really, it sounds like, trying to move away from, right? So now you're in the center of it again. How did that happen for you?
So, and yeah, I'm almost there. I haven't graduated yet on the doctorate part of things, but I am close, getting there. For a very long time, like many of us, and love learning. But I think the biggest part was becoming a father. I came off the road performing to become a father. That was going to be my priority. I prioritized wanting to raise children, or in that case, at that time, one child, and being a single father, ended up doing it for a period of time. But it was really important to me to lay the groundwork for a good relationship with a child. And at that same time that was occurring, I was trying to find that was really still grounded in service in some way, but that would still fulfill me and still do something for others. And so I tried law enforcement, because my father had spent his whole career in law enforcement. And I thought that might be a way to give back and do good and be helpful. And it didn't really take with me. And then I thought about Tony. I thought about Marvine. I thought about what I had been given, those gifts, and I instantaneously knew I have to see if I can be with students and try to work in a way that they don't have those experiences, that they're safeguarded, that they're excited about, books and reading and writing and the arts, because I wanted to get into doing, like, being a theater or dance teacher, English reading teacher. And that's actually where all the stuff where I started in education. And that's where my career has continued to go, trying to give back in those ways, serving kids and community, and creating relationships with staff and trying to train staff in ways that are really responsive and not reactive, and really grounded in, like, pro-social, really clear, explicit behavior that's culturally responsive, that's really grounded in social, emotional, strategic work. And from my heart leading kind of brand place, the whole idea is love, like that everything we do, we can operationalize love. For me, the love that healed me led me to the spaces I'm in now, in the right places with the right people doing the right work. And so I try to now elevate and encourage that with my students and communities and the staff, to live from this similar lens, that love, in the same way that giving it to yourself to heal you on a daily basis, is the same work we need to be doing to increase social, emotional wellness, mental health, and academic performance, for kids in K-12 spaces.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that. And now you obviously are making quite an impact in education. And then, of course, with this book, which is leading educators as well. I want to pull back a little bit before we talk about operationalizing love, which I do want to go into, is you mentioned really how being a father impacted you in understanding your own journey again. But you are a father, and at the time was father of one. But how many children do you have now, actually?
I'm blessed with 6. I have 6
That's
children.
Beautiful. 6 children. Wow. And what are their ages?
Yeah, I have Yep, I have a three-year-old. I have a 6-year-old. I have a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 26-year-old.
Wow, you've got quite the spread. I thought I had an impressive spread, but yours is even bigger than mine. That is quite a thing. And I know we're having some issues with audio, so I just want to make sure that everything's working technology-wise so that we can get a good connection here. Can you hear me okay?
I apologize. It's probably me. I can hear you okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it goes in and out a little bit. I don't know if it might be your Wi-Fi possibly, and maybe it's the connection. That's a challenge.
I apologize.
Right? No worries. Just want to make sure you've got a compelling story. We all want to hear all the details.
Sure, of course. Is that any better now?
Yeah, that's a little bit better. So what I'd love to understand more, because I think parenting is an interesting mirror that shines so much into our lives about us learning about ourselves, right? And you have 6 children. That's quite a journey of a lot of different levels and I imagine evolutions of parenting. So tell me a little bit about what you have understood and learned about yourself in just becoming a father.
Well, it's a beautiful opportunity to try to make the world a better place by allowing each of them to kind of come to terms with and actualize their most authentic selves, and helping to encourage that in another human being has been like tremendously rewarding in the experience of being a parent. It also is really interesting to see yourself reflected in your children, both the positives and the not so positive moments. I certainly have learned, where things occur that trigger me and trigger the child parts of me that are healed but scarred or still healing, in terms of navigating all different kinds of conversations and issues with my children, whether it be like my oldest daughter who just got married and working through the nature of letting her go more out into the world, or my youngest little girl on the other end of the bookend and starting to see her like blossom and expand and take in bigger to the world, or with my 6-year-old, and trying to help give him all the tools to work in very calm and gentle spaces, both from his self and how I help to work with him from my end. Those miraculous opportunities that come along have really been, just phenomenal.
That's awesome. And parenting is always lots of opportunities. There's good and bad, right? There's a lot of opportunities of learning and experimenting, right, to some extent. But I definitely feel you on the letting go. That's a journey that I feel like you kind of keep coming back to in different stages of letting go things, right? And allowing your children to be who they are. But it sounds like you're very responsive again to understanding the needs of each of your different kids. I want to say, in addition to your book, you also, on your website, you have a blog and you write about, there's a piece that kind of stood out to me. It's called When I Fail. And there was a lot of honesty about parenting, particularly in that piece. And I'm just curious to know, like, in your journey, how has your understanding or even admission of your own faults as a parent helped you in your healing or just in understanding yourself better?
I appreciate that. Thanks for checking that out. I fail all the time. I have to be very careful about how destructive that thought is in my head and what that internal critic does on a daily basis when I check myself in the morning, when I wake up and put my feet on the ground, grateful for another breath, or when I go to bed at night. as I run a little narrative in my head about, was I the best father? Was I the best husband? Was I the best human that I can be? And frequently I'm a little harsh on myself with a no answer around that. And then I unpack it a little too hard sometimes, because I fail a lot. Very imperfect, like we are, very fragile, prone to a lot of cognitive dissonance and some rigid thinking sometimes in my own approaches to being gentle with myself and giving myself permission to be human.
Mhm.
And I'm working hard on that, sometimes dealing myself a heavy dose of pain that is not necessary, to put the bat down, take the rocks out of the pockets, as people say, and release and relax on some of that. But the more honest I am with myself about my failings, the more clear my successes become, and the more opportunity again I see to get stronger on the shoulders of those mistakes or failings, in terms of navigating, like in that case, better, more honest, more gentle and compassionate conversations with my daughter. That in that post, I just blew it big time, um, and caused her harm that I needed to repair, and I repaired it right away, because I was aware of it. It's just sometimes in my triggering, in my damage that I've worked through. Um, I need a minute to really process and work through things, and then to like frame a response and make sure I can really do it with as much fidelity as possible and as much empathy as possible, and then move it forward.
Mhm.
But I tend to be very, I tend to be very okay with making a lot of mistakes and learning from them in my um, process and journey, in my school role, in my other professional work, in my personal life, and really kind of coming back again and again to be okay with apologizing. What can I do better? I'm sorry about this. How could I be a better father? I recognize I said this and it hurts you. How can I be a better husband? So I do push hard on that a lot in my work.
And that is so important. So I wanna honor our chat. I saw No Holdbacks is here. Welcome to another one of our I Rant families. Welcome, Tasha. That grace is important, and welcome, Yeshe Chico Jones. Peace to the chat. So thank you, and I think like you're talking about again that grace and failing. Yeah, we all fail. Like we all fail. And I think one of the most dangerous narratives is this idea of perfection that people have, that failing is a bad thing. It is really a learning space though, right? And I think that's exactly what you elevate in your post that you wrote, right? It's this idea that the humanity of not getting everything right all the time is okay. It's how we grow, it's how we learn, it's how we, for our children, honestly, I think how we show vulnerability to help them see that we're fallible so that they have the permission to be fallible too, right? There's so much there for certain, and it sounds like obviously this has been a big part of your life is fatherhood and parenting, but kids are obviously very important to you. Let's kind of shift into talking more about, and No Holdbacks TV says you fail to be able to succeed. Exactly, right? Like, and success is so individual. Like I'm just so big on breaking narratives that keep us in these constructs of what we need to be, because it is kind of almost like continuing to perpetuate some of those traumas, some of those places of pain that many people have been in, right? Is this idea that I have to be this person in order to be loved. I have to be this person in order to be valued. And there's so much danger in that. But again, you've done so much now with this book, and you speak to the idea that we can operationalize love. That's a pretty a big, but also I think very different perspective to come from. Tell me more about what that means for you and where you've come to that understanding. Oh, Matthew, the volume, something happened to your volume, so we can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, that's actually great. We can hear you.
I think that the love, the nature of the love that was given to me by those people that I had referenced, that, in essence, saved parts of me and taught me in ways how to begin to pick myself up, take myself out of the life raft and put myself back on land, so to speak, is the love that just kind of continued to elevate in my love for the things I was doing, that gave me so much purpose and meaning, and that gave me courage to do some really heavy work that I needed to do. And so by the time I was entering educational spaces and still getting healthy, mind you, and to this day, but really heavily working then in that mental health work, I saw love, missing in many kids' lives, and families struggling to express it in a lot of different types of ways, and knowing it was there, but frail and fragile in ways, because people were just carrying so much, struggling with so much. And I think over my work, my time, and in writing the book, and in my work as a teacher, and really as a administrator, it really became about nothing else can happen in a school community unless we recognize the simple and critical fact that children come first. And in order to do that, we have to do that origin work, right? That self-love work, and really work on bringing the most emotionally accessible, most emotionally available version of ourselves forward, the healthiest version of ourselves we can on a given day, in order to truly be available for our students. And that relational work there is really grounded in the self-love that we give to ourselves, is that we're also pouring and sharing with children and with staff. There are work love languages, just like there are personal love languages, and there's a lot of intersection between those love languages that can be shared, but that it is okay to love the work we do in school communities. It is okay to love our families to better spaces. It's okay to love our children. Some of the best ways we can love them are with those boundaries and expectations, and interventions that we provide to our children in schools. Clear, consistent, safe, predictable spaces and boundaries, driven by love, to say, hey, good morning, I love you, it's great to see you, how are you? I had a conversation the other day with a student who was just talking about how everybody sees them like a mess, like a failure, like all of these things. I said, you know what you need to know right now? I'm sitting here with you. Do you believe I'm here with you? Or do you believe we're here just talking? And he said, you're here with me. I said, so what does that look like or feel like to you? Well, you're listening to me. I said, okay, good. I am listening. I'm trying to actively listen to what you're really telling me. And I hear that something's missing for you. I hear that you're sad. You seem sad. You feel sad in terms of what you're showing me right now. Your words are telling me that. What can I do for you? When we began this deeper conversation, I said, one thing I want to tell you is that I love you, and I'm here to support you. And regardless of what happened at recess and what happened at lunch and what else is going on, I'm still going to be here at the end of the day, and I'm still going to show back up time and time again. And when you make mistakes and fall, we're going to unpack those and work through those. And if you cause harm, we're going to work on how to repair that and make that right. And all the times you succeed, I'm going to be checking in with your teachers to celebrate that too. That's what my love does for you. And that's what it does for me, and what our relationship is. And we're going to keep on working on these things. We're going to sit down here. We're going to write it out. We're going to discuss it. But it really helped me to start to think about, this notion of operationalizing it, is that, strategically laying out love and strategies to show or demonstrate love in our behaviors. Because it's one thing to talk about it, right? Beliefs are lived through action, but to talk about it, to implement it, in terms of how we empower and safeguard children in terms of how we elevate and support and build capacity in staff, and how we promote and bridge build with our families and create school partnerships with our families and caregivers and parents. You know, love can fill all of those spaces in very strategic ways. I just happen to use the nature of love, the word love and words around love to show that kind of affirmation, and affection, and belief in letting people know how valued they are when they're going to interact with me. Because I'm very much aware of how I present, of what this is.
So
And a lot of the people
tell
I
me
work
more
with
when you say what
throughout
this
my
is.
career, yeah, a lot of the people I serve and have throughout my career are Indigenous families and communities of color. So I am very much aware of intergenerational trauma and the histories that have followed so many of my families and their families and families across Western education, and in this country for 500-600 years or so of ostracizing and marginalizing behavior without love, especially in our schools and what they were designed for, to support like very specific dominant culture. So when I interact, when I seek understanding, when I choose to demonstrate value-based behavior with my families from all over the world, speaking different languages, whether they're first time here or have been here and seeking community, bonding, engagement, information, communication, from school, I have an opportunity to engage with them in a way to say, I am here to serve you. I am here to bring the nature of service to you from a love-based place. Those children that you entrust me with each day, I'm going to love on them in very particular ways. They're going to be safeguarded and protected. They're going to be communicated with. They're going to be educated. They're going to be looked out for. And it's not just my job. It's just part of what I do. But I don't exist in a silo. I have many partners in this work, and we're trying to build a culture and climate, whether it be where I am now or in other spaces with other colleagues, but where love rules, where the work is culturally responsive and is inclusive, because we're in a service-based profession working with human beings. And I want people to know that I'm not just an advocate, but a trusted ally. That's not only about dismantling and shutting down and stomping out other things that have caused that marginalization. With my team and with my other partners and with my mental health partners, but I am an ally at the gate, one of the first people they see every day, and that they belong there with me by my side. And when they need something, that I'm going to partner with them. And when they have frustrations and questions, I'm still going to show up and listen. And when they want me to come to their house, I'm going to be there. And when they want me to help work with their child on something, it's going to happen again and again, because this is what I chose to do. And it comes with, the responsibility I have in my position, especially as a white male educator. I have far more responsibility in this role than I'll ever have power, title, or authority. So much more. And so I fill that space with love every day. I fill those engagements, those communications, whether they are ones where like, we love what's going on here, or they're like, we have a big frustration right now, or we're having issues and we need help from some of your partners. That's how I plug it in. That's what I mean by that. And that's what I mean around the whole nature of operationalizing love in the work.
Well, I appreciate that. And you said it's a responsibility, right? Which is so important. But I am curious to know, because I think that there's a challenge, particularly as you brought up race, right? And we bring up bias sometimes, that love can be seen in a way where it actually can be detrimental. And you kind of spoke to this at the beginning in terms of your own experiences, but definitely just thinking, when and how have you been able to help guide educators to recognize when their love is almost harming a child in a way of pity, and this idea that I'm going to love you more and kind of not challenge you or push you, versus love that actually still is actually almost that tough love of growth and high expectations. Do you see, like, have you seen challenges between those two, and how do you address them?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you. I think there are those fine lines, just like in the languages, the love languages we might share in our personal lives and what we give or receive. I think in school settings, you're setting a groundwork, or I hope one is, I know where I am, we're working in those types of ways. I know many school partners are in MCPS in Maryland and across, the nation in many ways, but trying to set groundwork first around, what inclusive spaces look like, what culturally responsive behavior looks like, what it needs to feel like, and that we're really soliciting our stakeholders, our families, the students, to get that kind of voice feedback, to really listen to them, not only looking at the historic data of the school, but the elders, and the families and the history around us, to connect with that data, to pull that in as part of, like reimagining, re-envisioning the narrative of what school is like now post-pandemic, coming out of a time of loss, but now profound hope for what it could be, and trying to set a new groundwork there with all that history, but the new data, the new voices around what people want, what people need, from how they communicate, how they want to communicate with a school and school leaders, to how they perceive their, back to school nights or other events, to, bringing like PTA events or meetings to their communities directly, to come to their spaces, and providing anything from like meals to childcare or things like that, so that those kind of things can happen, because they might be working very different jobs and schedules than some traditional experiences. And so as those things get built out and kind of layered into, the practices and the behaviors of teachers, and school staff, paraeducators, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, whoever it might be, who are interacting with families and children on a daily basis, then we start to layer in those practices, so the language, that, we're here because we love the work, we're here because we're serving a purpose, we're here because we're in service, and we're focusing on two primary areas, right? Social emotional well-being, like mental health well-being work, and academic performance. And the intersection between both is critical. You can't have the performance being high and meeting benchmarks and all those kind of things with unhealthy children or unhealthy adults. And so making sure that you're finding ways to within the larger sense of the school culture and community, love on them around the messaging of loving what we do and why we do it and how we're going to do it, starts at that first level, and then moves deeper into those more interactive or intimate and more interpersonal, dynamics, one-to-one, or, adult to child, or, educator to families, and really teasing out, individually, person by person, what that love would look like and feel like. And there are ways to kind of audit those practices or monitor those things, at least in my end, as I'm doing the work in classrooms and in the building, around how people are navigating conversation with children, what kind of language framing we're using, mindful of various culturally responsive practices or approaches based on what's going on, with those dynamics. And so I think it is a kind of recursive conversation that you're coming back to, and fine-tuning interaction, fine-tuning relationship, fine-tuning behavior, and constantly seeking feedback from those you serve to make sure you're getting it right. When you don't, seeking to repair harm, or seeking to make amends or apologies, or to get corrections, or to gain further knowledge, to embolden your practice and make sure it's as authentic as possible and delivered, in the right kind of way. And to me, that's the love right there around that you're really, loving that experience enough, that potential interplay enough, to really do the right kind of work, where it could be a very challenging or difficult conversation, but one that needs to be had in the service of the family or the student. So I hope that answered some of it without me going on for too long about it.
Yeah, no, I think so. So what I heard is the foundation of just loving being an educator, being and putting and centering children at the center of it itself. But I think I heard a lot in terms of bringing in authentic voice from the people that you are engaging with, so that our love is the form of love that is necessary for the individuals in front of us, not what we see as love necessarily, because it isn't understanding everyone's way of communication and their needs, from what I'm hearing. And And there's a lot of relationship building. I do appreciate that you really elevate the social emotional learning as the backdrop and the foundation again, and the conditions necessary for students to thrive in academics, because that cannot be present without the safety of social emotional understanding and relationships between educators and students. So that's huge. So now, in addition to your book, you are doing some other things with your work in terms of trauma responsive community building. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about some of the other things you're doing in this realm?
Sure, thank you. So, beside Heartleader, and that's like the big labor of love project, but I am. You had mentioned it earlier. I'm a doctoral student at Bowie State University, specializing in the concentration in trauma responsive teaching and leading. My doctoral advisor is the head of the counseling program there, Dr. Otis Williams, a great guy, and we're working to shape my work there, looking at the efficacy of trauma responsive spaces and programming in K-12 education and MCPS is where I'm going to really focus. And if that programming, if those skills and tools being taught and used are effective for communities of color. And I'm working on research around that, And then I also write and publish a lot on the national level around designing trauma sensitive spaces, administrative and counselor alliances, mental health practices, and research around trauma informed and trauma responsive behaviors. And then with my publishing company, who published Heartleader, teacher going around to schools or business, whatever it might be, engaging in work around designing trauma sensitive spaces, around heart leading specifically for bridge building for school family engagement, or really working with educators to design practices and programming around very, very specific trauma sensitive tools and social emotional supports. So that's kind of like my other life that's happening, as well as being a school administrator.
That's a lot of balls in the air, a lot of things to juggle there, but making some impacts in many different places. And just to clarify, MCPS would be Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland, which is the same district that we both work in. But for those of us who are any listeners who are not familiar with MCPS, that is the space. But and thank you so much for the work you're doing. You've obviously been through quite a journey of your own to get to a place where now you are trying to help and heal so many other students and families and staff members, I'm sure. In this work and in creating Heartleader, what are some big key, final takeaways for yourself that you have understood about healing and the complexities of it?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think first I would say everyone has a story, and to be very gentle with theirs. And to that end, you never know what someone else is carrying with them, what they've been through. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of families from all over the world at this point in terms of experiences, and learned so much about them and maybe even more about myself around this work, and that you can never live in a space of judgment or bias or pretense when trying to make yourself really available to someone else, and that they trust you enough to be that open with you to talk and to share and to exchange. It's truly a gift when someone shares a story with you, and that the love that's happening there in that sharing, to try to bring your full self to bear upon that experience, full active listening, full engagement, as authentically as possible, because it's just all about, like you mentioned, it's all about authentic relationships and all about loving yourself and people authentically, for whatever that means on a given day to a person. The work we do in educational spaces and business, wherever it is, but specifically in educational spaces, is fraught with a lot of weight, a lot of challenges. And so being really gentle with oneself and loving oneself is really critical in the work, in order to do that other work, and to be as gentle with yourself as you are with those you're serving, the other staff, children, families, and patient and graceful. And when you need to check yourself, when you need to take a break, that's significant mindfulness right there. That's heavy self-care, that you're able to recognize that in yourself, and to run that kind of regulation check, and step away and go do the work you need to do for a moment or several moments or longer in that given space, to like be where you need to be to check your heart, mind, and spirit around things.
That's beautiful and so important. I think you lifted up kind of where we started, right? Your body, your mind, and your emotions all are connected to how we are healing, and all of those pieces need to be in sync, and we have to give ourselves grace. And I love that you said that, right? Everyone does have a story to tell. And thank you so much for telling your story, for sharing your story through your book, through your work. Thank you for joining us and sharing your story. And please tune in every Sunday at 9 p.m. for more stories of my guests who are taking their pain, finding their grounding, their centering, and now are healing others by leading with love, like Math here, leading with love through writing, through art, in all the different ways. This is how we heal in community. This is how we gain the tools. And hopefully tonight you have taken away some tools to continue to love, give yourself grace, and remember those boundaries are how you continue to heal and find your grounding. So thank you so much again, Mathew. Appreciate that. Thank you to Logic, Mr. M, who is the producer tonight, as well as to our iRant Network and everyone who tuned in. Please make sure before you leave that you hit the like button, you subscribe, hit the bell, and that you join me on all of the links below. And Mathew, follow him on, where are you? Social media, where would we find
on X, you can find me at X on at MJ Bowerman, or Insta at Mr. MJ Bowerman, or my Heartleader Trauma Group on Facebook on Heartleader, or www.teachergoals.com/Heartleader. Yeah, I'd love to engage with anybody and collaborate.
Below. I love it. Everything is linked below. Please you go check out, and you can see his blog is right here on the website. Please go and check it out, as well as the book. And if you have a Roku TV, please make sure, and Mathew, I don't know if you have a Roku TV, but please go, if you do, and find the iRant channel. We are featuring all of our many different shows from the network, as specifically also Pain to Power, and you can find the BGI station, where there are my shows, previous and current, and many other hosts from the iRant network. So please make sure you put that on your Roku TV. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of the places. And continue to join us every Sunday and your healing journey. Peace, love, and light.